Dash Dilek, welcome to Tibetttv's program on Tibet support groups. In today's edition of Introducing Tibet Support Groups, we will discuss about Bay Area Friends of Tibet in United States of America. To discuss about Bay Area Friends of Tibet, I'm joined by its president, Mr. Giovanni Vassallo. Welcome to Tibettv, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, first I would like to ask you about your organization. So can you tell our audience how did your organization come into existence and what are the major aims and objectives and how many members are there currently, sir?
These are great questions. Bay Area Friends of Tibet is one of the oldest Tibet support groups in the world, at least I mean to say in the United States. Founded in 1983 by such former members such as Tepo Tulku Rinpoche and Tenzin Sonam, who is from White Crane Films, and Ritu Sering and Tenzin Sonam was the son of Lamo Sering, the chief of the operations of the Mustang Resistance Movement. So him and other members like Jigme, Yuge, Raptin Setsang, and others formed Bay Area Friends of Tibet. And the mission of BayFat is to study, to promote, and to preserve Tibetan culture in all of its aspects and to educate the public about all things about Tibet. Now, in the past, we've had different types of membership lists. On Twitter, we have over 2,400 members, and on Facebook, we have hundreds of members. As far as the members itself, we have always been mostly volunteers, and most of the board members were started in the 1990s or in the 2000s, and many have started to pass away. So now we have dwindled to a very small number of actual people who are running the organization.
Okay, sir. So actually your organization is carrying out lots of activities for the cause of Tibet, but there are two major activities, that is Tibet Day and 10 March. So tell us about these two major activities and what are the responses from public?
Well, we held an annual Tibet Day, which was actually stemmed from March 10th. March 10th and Tibet Day were two of the same event originally, but back in the 80s and 90s when the Tibetan community was just starting in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, it was decided to move Tibet Day to be a separate day so that would focus on more of the cultural aspects and not just on the protests and the street protests. But so what we have done is we had Tibet Days organized up until 2012, where hundreds of people through many years have been educated on the issue of Tibet and introduced to Tibet. And as far as March 10th, the Tibetan National Uprising Day, we know this is something that's an anniversary every year. So every year, I, for instance, would have always spoken at every Tibetan National Uprising Day since 1997. But in the past, I have done things, and BayFat has done things such as being the key liaison to bring Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi to the Tibetan community and have her representatives speak there and be the connector between the Tibetan community and, for instance, like the San Francisco city leaders and others. And but in addition to all of this, BayFat is most famous originally for the resettlement of Tibetans into the Bay Area, including resettling over 65 Tibetans and their families into the Bay Area. And so then over the years, we still also continue to provide all sorts of support to Tibetans, including finding them jobs and helping them find new life in a new way to support their culture and their beliefs in this country, in the United States, while still keeping their identity alive.
Sir, recently your government passed a new law, Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020. So my question is, how did you feel when you heard this news, and how will this new law strengthen the cause of Tibet?
Well, I think it was great news when I heard that this was passed. I remember when the first Tibet Policy Act in 2002 was passed with the leadership of Lodi Gyari and an international campaign for Tibet. And so this was a natural extension of many much more thoughts and codification of the U.S. thinking on Tibet. And I thought it was wonderful that it would help protect the institution of the Dalai Lama by having a world strongest superpower back the idea that the Tibetan Buddhists can decide their own religion peacefully, and that the Dalai Lama can decide his own reincarnation as is his right. And I thought that was very important, as well as something that India could take a cue on as protecting the waters of Tibet and the environmental concerns raised in the Tibet Policy Act. I thought was very important, and the way it also, again, provided more protections as far as the relationship of the United States formally with the Tibetan people in exile, like giving more of a recognition to the Central Tibetan Administration and encouraging dialogue, not just with His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Dalai Lama's representative, but actually respecting democracy and say, let's also include in this Central Tibetan Administration. You should also can talk to them as well, or them, Dalai Lama, or the elected people, representatives. So I thought that was another good step. Now, I always think that personally that Tibet deserves complete freedom. So there's always so much more improvement.
Sir, as you are well aware that Tibetans are seeking a genuine autonomy based on middle way approach. So how important do you think is the role of middle way approach for the cause of Tibet?
Well, I look at it, the middle way approach, from the idea perspective of self-determination. This is one very strong um, proposal that actually helps celebrate the Tibetan right to decide their own future in peace. And I think middle way would be strengthened by an additional referendum of the Tibetan people. One person, one vote kind of thing would help support the middle way. If this is what the Tibetan people really want, then this should be solidified as well through the principles that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has championed for so long, and that is genuine democracy. And this gift can only be useful if every Tibetan, as best as possible, can exercise it and their vote be heard and listened. So if this is the real way that Tibetan people want to go, and they have supported this in many ways through the Central Tibetan Administration, then I think that there should be strong voice of the Tibetan people to be able to have a vote on this again, to reaffirm it, and because it has been, it has a foundation that His Holiness knows, stemming from Tibet's historical status, and still respecting Tibet's past while looking forward to build a genuine mutual relationship. And if we can do that, it doesn't. I don't care the name middle way or some kind of name of the proposal. What we need is the Tibetan people to get the genuine democracy and justice and peace back. And the middle way has been a consistent proposal that has been proposed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That has been again. I feel he used historical knowledge and deep knowledge of the situation of Tibet to come up with this. So it's not something that can that we can just look away from. We need to study this and see how it can work because of our interconnectedness and interdependence with big powers. And of course, Tibet has to live with China, the People's Republic of China. So we want to have a happy relationship and a mutual one. So that's why Middle Way is so good. I personally always feel that Tibetan also maintain the right to decide their own future. If that also means Rongzen, then I will stand behind Tibetan, whatever they decide.
Sir, I have a very interesting question for you. Sir, when did you first come into contact with His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and tell our audience the relevance of his messages on peace, love, and compassion?
Well, I indirectly came into contact with him when I was 14 years old or even younger, actually, because I was raised as a Buddhist monk. Part of my childhood, my father sent me to a monastery in Nepal, Tekchen Chiling, which is a branch of Drepung Monastery, same as His Holiness. So one of my first names was Ngawang, which was one of His Holiness' first names. So I feel I have a spiritual connection with him since childhood and my whole life. But as far as meeting him in person, I was happy to meet him in 2003, somehow amazingly, in 3 different continents by going to India, by helping to work on him, on his visit to receiving an honorary doctorate degree at the University of San Francisco here, and also by attending a Tibet support group meeting in Prague. So 2003 was just an amazing year for me to be able to meet His Holiness in 3 different continents. But I feel like he's always been with me my whole life as being an ex-Buddhist monk.
So before we end our, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Before we end our discussion, I would like to request you to speak our audience something in Tibetan, since you speak Tibetan very well. So would you like to say something?
Gongda nga böke yapumindu nga kula gagidu mi mang so pe yakpudu bupa mi mang very strong. I'm sorry, my böke yapumindu but sim bupare and I always just like to be with Tibetan people, if I can just say that in English, because that's my own mother tongue, and that's what I respect about the Tibetan people.
So with this, we are going to end our discussion here, and I would like to thank you for joining our program. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.